Marcus Fakatou chose Ohio State over Georgia and Texas. And what he said about the facilities and why he chose them right after actually tells us a lot about where this program is headed, especially with the major facilities upgrades we've seen, hearing, and been talking about the last couple of weeks. If you've been following recruiting at all, you know that last week, the story of the national media, last week, Marcus Fakatou committed to Ohio State, and the story of the national media loves to tell is that the programs with the shiniest new facilities and the biggest bag are going to vacuum up every single five-star in sight. That may have been true 5-10 years ago, but the facilities arm race does not equate automatic blue chip hauls anymore. Neither does showing off Lamborghinis or motorcycles or yachts or whatever else it might be. We know that because Marcus Focatau just looked at Georgia, Texas, and the rest of the SEC powers and said he is picking Ohio State anyway. Then he came out in an interview with Jeremy Birmingham and said the facilities, quote, really wasn't all that. And that's where he said it. Compared to what some other facilities are showing recruits and what other teams are kind of enticing recruits with right now. Normally, that would be really bad news, especially since Cincinnati, just down the road, a Big 12 program, not even a Big 10 program, has constructed nicer facilities than what Ohio State has. But the good news is that this is all about Ohio State and the recruiting master, Ryan Day, what he has chosen to present the program as. And right now, it's working absolutely perfectly. Now, believe me, I'm not saying fans should be celebrating a kid saying the Buckeyes facilities aren't elite or anything like that. I'm not trying to tell you that. Buckeyes need to improve their facilities, and they are. If Ohio State is the best, they should have the best everything for these players. But if you stick with me for the next about 20 minutes, I'll explain what he really said. And if you put that next to the news of the future facilities upgrade that Ross Bjork announced a couple of weeks ago, it paints a picture that's a lot more encouraging for where Ohio State is positioned than most people are giving credit for. So let's get into it. Ohio State fans need to. Here we go. Ohio State fans need to stop listening to the national media spin that Ohio State is somehow behind on the facility game and therefore they are behind on recruits. Am I saying that they have the best facilities in the world? No, but I'm also not saying that they're behind on recruits because they're behind on the facilities game. 5-star defensive lineman Marcus Fakatou just committed to the Buckeyes last week over Georgia and Texas, and then said flat out the facilities really weren't the fanciest that he saw. The real story isn't that Ohio State is lacking, it's that the culture and development pipeline here at Ohio State is strong enough to win that anyway, because Ohio State is using their lack of pizzazz to communicate to players that if you're really serious about football and not cars or money or whatever else it might be, you come to play for the Buckeyes, not the Texas Lamborghinis, right? Not the Michigan motorcycles, not the Tennessee yachts, not the Ole Miss souped up golf carts. That's the part that people keep missing. But the recruits are seeing it. While other schools like to sell the shine, Ohio State delivers the development. See, the part that gets lost in the noise is that Marcus Fakatou didn't just pick Ohio State on a whim. He reclassified from the 2028 class into the 2027 class, took his time, visited multiple blue blood programs, and still landed with Ohio State. In fact, he actually canceled official visits to, I believe it was Notre Dame and Oregon, to farther north programs, because he already knew where he wanted to go. He did go to Georgia and Texas, knowing he was going to be a Buckeye, knowing that that was most likely what was going to happen. And when it was over, he didn't lead with NIL talk or facilities renderings, although we all know NIL is a real factor for all these players. You have to be competitive. You have to be respectable. But what he did talk about was the culture. He talked about development. He talked about the fact that Ohio State has been getting guys to the NFL at a rate that stands out nationally the last few years, and really their entire program history. Of course, Ohio State's kind of sell the last few years, but really their entire program history, they've been putting guys in the league. That's the earthquake part, I guess you could say, of the story. In an era where a lot of recruiting coverage treats facilities and the cars and the fancy shine like the ultimate tiebreaker, one of the top defensive line prospects in the country just told Ohio State fans the exact opposite is true at Ohio State right now. Many fans buy into this idea that Ohio State has to match every other conference, power conference school, dollar for dollar, building for building, car for car, because we could expect to consistently, how could we expect to consistently land this level of talent without it? And I'm not knocking anyone for saying that. It can certainly feel that way, and it's understandable, right? We've all seen the photos of the programs, their new weight rooms, the player lounges, right? Clemson's slide that they have. It creates this fear that the program is fighting with one hand tied behind their back. But then you look at what Marcus Fakatou actually said and what he chose, and it forces you to ask a harder question, to ask the question, if the facilities aren't the deciding factor for a kid like this, what actually is? Well, on Friday on the Austin and Birm shows, I think it was the Talking Stuff segment that Jeremy Birmingham does, he said, I don't have the exact quote of what he said in front of me, so I apologize, but basically he said when he came to Ohio State, it really wasn't all the facilities that stood out or was a standpoint. He wasn't knocking the program. He was specifically said, but it didn't have the fanciest setup like some of the other schools that he visited. Then he immediately followed it up by saying the culture and everything else played a big role for him. He talked about how nice it felt to finally put the phone down, to stop fielding the 24/7 messages from coaches, and to focus on his family in his senior year. He sounded absolutely relieved when he talked about Ohio State. Like everybody else was putting the pressure on him, but the Buckeyes just wanted to see him play ball. He sounded like a kid who had found the right fit, not the shiniest fit, but the right fit for him. Now, the program has been open about the fact that major renovations are coming to get the Buckeyes up to par with the rest of the country, and really the best of the country, you could say. It's not a secret that they're trying to hide. If anything, it kind of sounds like the Buckeyes are embracing it, which worked because Marcus, his decision actually shows that the staff, specifically Larry Johnson and Ryan Day, are winning on the things that still matter most to a certain kind of high-level recruit. The development, the clear path to the NFL, relationships, and a culture that doesn't need the wrapping paper to feel like home, the culture that actually exists because everybody's there for the same reason, to play ball. And best of all, those guys typically don't require the biggest NIL deals, right? They just need a respectable or competitive one, which is impressive because the Woody Hayes Athletics Center is it's an okay facility. It's not a dump, but compared to some of the brand new bells and whistles complexes that have gone up around the country the last 5 years, it's not the one that makes recruits' jaws drop or anything like that by any means. That's reality, and the program knows it. That's why this massive renovation and upgrades have been in the works, and why we've been hearing more concrete movement on them the last couple of weeks. Those upgrades are real. They're coming. I mean, Ross Bjork talked about how they have the number set and everything else. They just got to raise the money now, and they'll start on everything in about 18 months. But here's the responsible part of the conversation that sometimes gets lost. Ohio State is always going to spend on coaches who develop elite defensive line talent, offensive talent, whatever you want to call it. They're always going to spend on coaches to produce elite talent and put them in the most high-profile stages to perform in without having the absolute top-tier facilities. Larry Johnson's track record speaks for itself. In the last few years, Ohio State has consistently sent defensive linemen to the NFL at a rate that matches or exceeds most programs in the country. And we all know they love to market that. That's why they have the developed here signs all over the facilities. That's why every time you end a video from Ohio State, it says Ryan Day or developed here or something like that. Like they're trying to get this message out there as much as they can because it's their entire identity. It's everything they're selling to recruits, because maybe they aren't the greatest facilities, but they have trained some of the greatest talent in the country. Marcus is choosing to bet on his development on the same pipeline. He's betting that the coaching, the scheme fit, and the culture of the room and the track record of getting guys ready for the next level are worth more than walking into the shiniest weight room in the country, or a room full of cars or Lamborghinis or whatever else it might be. That's not to say that facilities don't matter. They do. Like we can't just act like you can have a dump and it works out for you, especially in the retention, day-to-day quality life of 18 to 22-year-olds, sometimes 23, sometimes 24-year-olds who are living on campus. The upgrades they're getting are necessary if they want to stay at the absolute top of the recruiting food chain for long term. Now, no serious person is arguing with that, but what they are improving all shows their value. They aren't putting in bowling alleys or slides or waterfalls. They're putting in a bigger locker room. They're putting in more areas to watch film. They're putting in bigger offices, right? Most fans see the player development Larry Johnson and the entire Ohio State staff have been running for years. It's not flashy facilities with bowling alleys or waterfalls. It's about how the Buckeyes have drafted at least one defensive lineman every year since 2018. They've had at least one drafted. It's about how in 2025, they became the first class in program history to produce 4 defensive linemen in a single draft. On top of that, Ohio State has had at least one first-round pick in every draft since 2016, the longest active streak in the Big Ten, and holds the all-time NFL record for the most first-round selections with 99 and counting, including multiple double-digit draft classes in recent years. But what really sets the program apart is how it develops the entire units and depth. All 8 starters from the 2024 defense who entered the draft were selected in 2025. Most within the first 5 rounds, proving the Buckeyes prepare cohesive, pro-ready groups rather than just isolated talents. Their elite strength and conditioning and position coaching also drive physical and technical transformations that turn good athletes into reliable pros, fueling a steady stream of mid-round and undrafted contributions who carve out real NFL careers to be ready for that. That mix of annual line production, sustained premium picks, and whole roster development is why Ohio State can talk about how they're reloading as one of the league's most dependable talent sources. Marcus is going to benefit greatly from all that prestige, from all those accolades, from everything that Ohio State says they do, and they back it up and actually do it. You see, he played edge in high school, but is already down to 265, and Ohio State wants him closer to like 270, 275 as a versatile interior outside rusher. I personally feel like he's going to end up playing inside the tackles more in Matt Patricia's scheme, but regardless, he has a modern defensive line body that is twitchy enough to play on the edge, but stout enough to kick inside as well. Larry Johnson has a long history of taking guys with that kind of frame and turning them into productive college players who get drafted. Guys like Tamba Hali, I believe it was how you pronounce his name, back in 2006 at Penn State, he developed him. The Bosa brothers were pretty similar profiles heading into Ohio State as well. Not exact, they're not one for one, but they had similar profiles as they were coming into Ohio State. And just last year, you want to talk about recently, you had a guy like Caden Curry was a good example of a player Larry Johnson took from kind of that hybrid big edge / 3 tech coming out of high school and putting him in the NFL. When a kid like Marcus looks at that and says the culture and everything else won out over fancier facilities, he's telling you that he values the process more than the presentation. That's exactly the kind of recruit that Ohio State wants, because it's not just setting themselves up to get the recruit, but it's setting themselves up with somebody who is in line with the culture of the program. That's the kind of recruit who buys into long-term plans instead of chasing the next bag or the next flashy visit. And in an era where the transfer portal makes it easier than ever for guys to bounce when things get hard, having players who choose Ohio State for the development and the culture is a real competitive advantage. And then when you add in the major renovations and upgrades that are moving forward are going to give this staff even better tools. That's the thing. Like they're not putting, like I said, they're not putting in waterfalls. They're not putting in slides. They're putting in better tools for their coaches, better development opportunities for their players, better recovery spaces, better training environments, better day-to-day experiences for the players who are already here and the ones who they're trying to land. That's going to help with retention because they're going to look at these other places and say, yeah, you got a slide. That's great. But what do you have to make me a better player? Right? So that's going to help with retention. That's going to help with recruiting. It's going to help in the margins with some of the recruits who do care a lot about the bells and whistles. It's going to make the overall package more complete. The facilities upgrades coming don't change the reputation. They protect and enhance it. They give the staff more to show on visits without having to over-rely on, the trust us to the development here is elite narrative. They improve the day-to-day life for the guys who are already committed and the ones who will be here in 2026 and 2027 and beyond. Of course, the facility upgrades aren't happening in 2026, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's just going to continue once those upgrades happen. They make it less enticing to leave when the portal comes calling, and not just because they will be better, but because it will be enhancing what the program actually does with players once they get here. If the upgrades don't change what the program is selling moving forward, it makes that what they're selling more compelling moving forward. That's the part I want Buckeye fans to hold on to and know with these upgrades. The culture and the development piece isn't some, intangible marketing slogan that, some schools might say, but they really don't buy into. It's the reason Marcus is putting the scarlet and gray on instead of another school's color. It's the reason other high-level recruits keep choosing this place, even when the facilities tour isn't the flashiest one they see, or maybe they don't see Lamborghinis out on the field, or, Kyle Whittingham riding in on a motorcycle or whatever else it might be. And with the major renovations and upgrades that have been moving forward, that foundation is about to get stronger infrastructure around it. Now, the team still has to execute on the field, right? You're betting on the execution, which is a pretty good bet with Ohio State. They still have to navigate the portal intelligently. They have to develop the guys who they have, keep winning games that matter. None of that changes, right? You have to do that anyway because the fans demand it. But the Marcus story paired with the facilities progress we've been hearing about shows that Ohio State is building from a position of real strength, not patching holes in a broken model. That's that's a better place to be than a lot of programs are at right now. Excuse me. After Marcus Fakatou committed to Ohio State over Georgia and Texas, and then said the facilities weren't the deciding factor, that would be a huge concern and in time for an uncomfortable conversation for other programs. Things about whether they've been overrating how much shiny buildings actually move the needle, but for Ohio State's development culture, it is absolutely music to their ears. It shows that they're betting on a strategy that is already winning at the highest level. And the upgrades coming are going to make that even more dangerous because they aren't trying to be something they're not. They're investing in who they are. And in the world of college football, a program who knows who they are is incredibly enticing to the players, to the families, to the coaches, to anybody that's trying to come in and join. Because if you are solid in who you are, other people want to join that. Here's the bottom line, right? Marcus Fakatou didn't choose Ohio State because we had the best facilities on his visit. He chose it because the culture and the development and the track record of getting defensive linemen to the NFL felt like the right fit for him and felt like exactly what he is after. That's a win for Larry Johnson's room and for the program's overall approach. The major facility renovations and upgrades that have been progressing are going to close one of the remaining gaps and make the overall package even more complete. That combination, which is already a strong foundation, plus meaningful infrastructure improving, puts Ohio State in a better long-term position than other programs are comfortable our other programs are comfortable with, because at Ohio State, sharp steel seldom softens. Iron sharpens iron. The Buckeyes make that happen every single day. For the Buckeye fans, this should alleviate a lot of anxiety about the facilities cap, right? It's been something fans have been a little concerned about with some time now, especially when you saw Cincinnati put up their facility and everything happened there. But the foundation of them, the culture and the development, were already strong enough to win this battle. The upgrades are going to make it even stronger. That's something worth feeling good about without pretending the hard work is over. Thanks for listening into the Buckeye Huddle podcast with me, JR. Come on over to Buckeye Huddle. Check us out there, BuckeyeHuddle.com. We got a message board and everything over there as well that I'm sure you would love to be on, and I'm sure we'd love to have you conversing with us there. So drop your take on Marcus's decision in the comments below, what the facility upgrades really changed in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. Is this as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be? Or, was Marcus's comments just Marcus's comments? Let me know, and give us a like and a subscribe before you get out of here. We really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow.